Our next speaker is Javed Huck. Javed, if you can join me on the stage. Javed's the Vice President of GP Bullhound. GP Bullhound started up originally in London. They moved to Manchester. They've been in Manchester now for about 5 or 6 years, and they help a lot of tech companies in terms of their journey. So Javed, if you join me on the stage, give Javed a huge round of applause if you would. First question first. How was the traffic?
Oh, it's great, isn't it?
Okay.
From Manchester.
Okay.
2 hours.
That's the M62. 2 hours to get from Manchester. That's a good journey, that is. Just tell us a bit about GP Bullhound. What do you do?
Sure. So we, as you say, were set up about 20 years ago. We are a tech-focused investment bank, and we are all about helping entrepreneurs build the biggest businesses in Europe. So where we help entrepreneurs out is where they're looking for Series C funding and above, or Series B, depending on what you want to call it. But the number for us is £20 million and above, typically to help companies internationalize themselves. The idea being is we'll do 2 or 3 rounds with companies looking to raise between 20 and 50 million pounds, and then they seek to exit. And one of the things that we're very good at doing is selling European-based businesses to US conglomerates. So we sold businesses to Apple, to Facebook, to Google, to Snapchat, all of those guys. So we've got great connections on the west coast of America, so we can put European software companies and tech companies in touch with those big West Coast buyers.
Can I just check? Can everyone hear Javed at the back? Okay.
Can you all hear me?
Can you hear him? Okay. Okay. In terms of GP Bullhound, one thing you do every year, you come out with your tech predictions. So your tech predictions this year came out in, I think, January. 10 tech predictions.
Yep.
I think you work on the basis if you can get 7 right, you've done pretty well.
Yep.
I was looking at them. I'm going to put you on the spot right now. So one of them that you came up with was digital banking would continue to rise, which is a reasonably safe bet. Revolut, named as UK's fastest growing tech company with an average 3-year growth rate of 48,477%.
It's all right.
It's not doing too bad, is it?
Yeah.
It's not doing too bad at all. That's a sector that's only going to get bigger and bigger. Do you think?
Yeah, I think it's transitioning from being a very traditional industry to one that has to become digital. I think the traditional banks are really struggling to digitize themselves in a way that's attractive to younger consumers in particular. I think the most interesting thing will be, because it's not just Revolut, you've got Monzo here, you've got N26 in Germany. They're all spending a huge amount of money on marketing to acquire those customers. But what's going to be really interesting is which of these digital platforms are going to be able to monetize the customer best. So we did another piece of research about 3 or 4 months ago, part of our Tech Titans report. In there we saw that people like Revolut and Monzo, they're only monetizing their customer base to about £7 per user, which means they're still massively loss-making. So whilst they're acquiring these customers really quickly, they're not able to monetize them as well as they should be yet. So it's all about how well they're going to be able to diversify their products into that customer base in order to become profitable.
I've got a number of my friends who use these challenger banks, and they have their accounts, but they have 2 accounts. They have one with the main bank, your Barclays of the world, and they put their mortgage and rent through that.
Yep.
And they've got another one which is much more their discretionary spend as well. Is that the challenge for them?
That's exactly right. So, they're going to market typically with payment cards that people will be able to use cards overseas, for example, whereby they're not charging any transaction fees. However, they're not able to attract those customers such that they are putting all of the direct debits through those accounts, so that they're taking mortgages out with their accounts, insurance products, for example. Once they're able to capture the customer and provide all those different products and services into that customer, that's when they'll be monetizing them to a far greater extent, such that they become profitable.
So quick show of hands, how many people in the room have got a Challenger bank account? Right, okay, if I can just come to you, and I asked her earlier if she'd take part in a Q&A and she declined very, very politely. Just a quick look, a much younger demographic.
Yeah.
Other predictions, in 2017, one of the other ones that you spoke about was retail. Retail is going to have to work a lot smarter. Hosted an event today about the whole issue of e-commerce as well. We've got Shop Direct. Shop Direct have got their own UX lab. It's the whole user experience lab as well. Tell us what you mean by work smarter, and do you see that continuing moving forward?
Yeah, so you're testing me here, aren't you, Chris?
Yeah.
So that
2 hours on the M62, and then you're getting tested.
So that was more about physical stores moving more into the digital space. So we're all very aware of the fact that there's lots of online retail available at the moment. But if you look at the stats, only about between 7 and 15% of all retail purchases are done online, depending on which country you're in. So in the UK, it's slightly more. If you go to less developed economies, it's somewhat less. So the vast majority of retail activity and retail purchasing still happens in store. So what we were talking about is how those physical stores can become more digital. And the great thing about the report that we write is it's compiled from people in the Far East and from the US and from Europe, so we get ideas from everyone and what they're seeing and what trends they're seeing. And so what's great about it is, we've got guys on the West Coast who are seeing what Amazon are doing with their Amazon Go stores. So for example, you can walk into an Amazon Go store on the West Coast of America, and it will automatically pick up that you've got an Amazon Prime account, so you can just pick all the stuff that you want off the store, walk out the store without having to do anything on checkout, and it will automatically charge your Amazon account, for example. In the Far East, in China, on the other hand, you've got Hema stores, which are part of Alibaba, and what they're doing is really combining digital experiences with that in-store, experience, whereby, for example, if you're a lady, you can go to the bathroom, you can look at an augmented reality mirror, whereby you can then test out different types of makeup, and then you can put them straight into your digital basket and pay for them straight away. And then what's really cool about those stores, and it's becoming so popular, is that people are actually moving to within the catchment area of a Hema store, such that you can put everything in your basket, pay for it without actually having to do anything, and have it all delivered home before you get home. So people are actually moving house to get closer to those Hema stores so they can benefit from that service.
It's pretty sad, that is, if you ask me. I mean, one of the other reports that and I say that as a father of two daughters, I'm going to move to China now. You produced a report earlier this year. You mentioned it earlier, the Tech Titans report.
Yep.
It's very easy to navel gaze, isn't it, to look at the tech sector in the UK, and there are some great unicorns. And as Johnny said, there's some great companies in Liverpool with the potential to be a unicorn in the future. Yet, if we compare ourselves where Europe sits in comparison to, say, Asia and America in the tech race, where are we?
I'd say, look, building a unicorn isn't easy, and nor should it be. But what we've been trying to do as a European ecosystem is kind of provide the tools that enable entrepreneurs to build those types of businesses more easily. The biggest challenge that we have is that, Europe is a big continent, but there's lots of different countries, different cultures, different languages. Therefore, building unicorns in an individual country, such as the UK, is more difficult because you haven't got that home market, which means you've got to go international a lot quicker. If you're in the US or in China, it's much easier to build a unicorn within your own domestic market. So historically, and I guess structurally, it's more difficult. But, we have been catching up far more quickly to those US and Asian companies in terms of the number of unicorns that we're building and in terms of the cumulative value of those unicorns. So I'd say, compared to 5 years ago when we first started doing that piece of research, we're doing much, much better. And I guess what we've been trying to do with that Titans of Tech report is to say, right, building a unicorn is one thing, which is great, but let's reset the ambition levels and say, rather than building $1 billion company, let's build a $50 billion company. And there are 6 of those in the world currently, and we think that Europe as a whole is starting to develop companies which are going to hit that $50 billion level over the next couple of years ago.
In terms of the reason we're here today, we're here to talk about the Liverpool City Region Climbers list, and the ones to watch. 35 great companies, based here in the region as well. The investment sizes that you raise are typically £20 million and above. Slightly unfair question. What's your take on Liverpool's tech sector, and what does it need to do, in terms of moving forward?
I think there's a good burgeoning tech sector here. You listen to the guys who were on earlier about how they're working in the Baltic Triangle. I think there's quite a lot of interesting companies being built in the Baltic Triangle, and further afield in Liverpool. We speak to companies like GasTag. We've met them a couple of times. We think they're doing some really interesting stuff in gas safety software. We know the guys at Living Lens really well.
It's funny you say that, actually, because we might have the founder and the CEO on the next panel afterwards.
All right, good. If David Curtis is here as well, then that'd be great. But I think there's a lot of interesting ideas coming out of Liverpool. I think where Liverpool could work on a little bit more is, and again, I heard it earlier from the lady speaking on stage beforehand, is that finding that angel investment is quite difficult in Liverpool. So if you go into Manchester, there's a great angel network out there whereby you can more easily access funding, and Manchester's by no means the perfect city to do so either. If you go to a place like Edinburgh and Cambridge, you've got really strong angel and founder networks whereby getting that seed capital to get companies off the ground is somewhat easier. So for me, the first step is really building that angel network in Liverpool in order to be able to get that funding to get your business off the ground. And then it's being about proactive, because you're not going to have the next level of funding everywhere, or organizations who can provide the next level of funding everywhere around the country or based there. Therefore, you have to be as proactive as possible to go out, to Manchester, down to London, sometimes even to the West Coast to go and find that funding to go and take yourself to the next level.
Final question from me, and I don't know if we've got any questions from the audience, but if we have, just put your hand up. But in terms of, you do your tech predictions every year, so you'll be looking at 2020. If you were to give us a flavour, what do you think is going to be big going forward in 2020?
That's a secret. We don't like to publish that.
Can you say anything at all?
One thing that we think is going to become more and more prevalent. So you've got this idea of something as a service.
Yeah.
Right. So software as a service has always been the historical one. You know, stuff like infrastructure as a service, platforms as a service is becoming more prevalent as well. But actually, the whole concept of providing any sort of technology as a service, as opposed to a sort of one-off purchase, we see sort of migrating into all sorts of different verticals, even as far and wide as like autonomous vehicles, for example.
I interviewed one of the chaps at Vanarama today, and they were talking about the fact that they see, Vanarama, they see vehicles being hired per hour, and you now buy insurance by the hour, so it's product as a service. That's where we're going to move forward, and personalisation as well. Has anybody got any questions for Jared? I mean, if you need any tips about driving and getting between Manchester and Liverpool, Jared is most definitely your man. Put your hands together for Jared from GP Bullhound. Thanks very much. Thank you.